Someone's keying their microphone. Okay, stand by for systems. Okay, Steve. Okay, I got that. Someone's...
After years of unanswered questions, a break in the unsolved Gilgo Beach murders out of Long Island.
I'm done. I'm done. You're all right. You're all right. You're all right.
You're dead, man.
A little bit earlier, the Hampton County District Attorney just released new evidence in the abduction and murder of Holly Karanen of Sturbridge, a forced serial killer more than 30 years after the last victim was found.
The New Bedford highway murders terrorized the South Coast back in the 80s, and as chief investigator Cheryl Fiandato reports, one victim's family believes the case is one tip away from being solved.
There are new developments in a case that terrorized the central U.S. for decades. Investigators believe the BTK killer may have had more victims than we first knew. Emily McKenna now on what they found in his backyard this week.
Hey! You want to get... Hey! Hey! 43! 43! Hey! Put your hands up! Put your hands up! Get on the ground! Hey, got one in the back! One in the back! I swear to God! That's it! You move your whole hands! Like pants coming down the hill! Got two on foot! That's the problem. Y'all want coming down the ramp. I'm gonna tell you, get off the boy. Coming down the ramp, gray sweatshirt, black pants, mask on. Guy just jumped down. He just jumped down.
Yeah, we will. What have you been arrested for? You ever been arrested before?
Danny, where's your car?
Never been arrested before in LA?
My foot was down.
How long ago? Sit up. How long ago? What's your name? What's your name?
11.
Developing this morning, new insight into capturing a suspected serial killer. The California man is believed to be behind a string of brutal murders that started back in July. Well, police say he was caught yesterday while he was hunting for another victim. Here's CBS's Bradley Blackburn.
Stockton, California police say this is the suspected serial killer who has had an entire city frozen in fear. Wesley Brownlee was arrested just after 2 a.m. Saturday near his Stockton home.
Tonight in Moscow, Idaho, Brian Koberger, the man charged with stabbing 4 college students to death, now indicted by a grand jury.
It would have made a frightening Hitchcock thriller if the crimes hadn't been real. A killer was stalking Boston women, raping and strangling them. In the most grotesque manner, he would display his work, and he always left a bizarre calling card, a nylon tied in a granny knot around the neck of each victim.
Good evening. Welcome to 22 News at 11. An intriguing development tonight concerning the search for the killer of Molly Bish.
Understandably, security is extremely tight here at the Pensacola City Jail. On the second floor of this building, Ted Bundy is under constant guard. Authorities are very well aware of the fact that Bundy has twice escaped from jail, and now that they know who he is, they are not about to let him slip away again. When he was arrested shortly after midnight on Wednesday, he was just considered a belligerent speeder. He fought with arresting officer David Lee when Lee stopped him for speeding. Only late last night, following FBI fingerprint identification, did Pensacola police learn they had captured one of the most wanted and, according to the FBI, most dangerous criminals in the country.
On the evening of February 9th, 2004, almost 18 years ago, Maura Murray crashed her car on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, never to be seen again.
I can't. Negative. I can't say. All I can say is this man needed help. This man seemed like a man who was coming up to a storm or to a climax. This very blood-curdling thing at one of the cutoffs where he said, children kill, and then sort of an agonized cutoff, enough to turn your hair whiter than mine.
So inside the thrift shop, St. Vincent de Paul, attorney Melvin Belli and the San Francisco police waited for the Zodiac killer.
It's not Devin.
We're going to have a great time together.
It may be the creepiest episode ever on The Dating Game, because this bachelor looking for love back in 1978 is actually a serial killer.
This afternoon, we have learned a convicted pedophile who admitted to assaulting dozens of children will not be getting out of prison today.
A lawyer for Wayne Chapman tells us several things need to be done before he's officially released. Many people are upset that Chapman will even go free. WBZ's Anna Myler has more now at noon from Shirley.
Well, it is a case that has never gone cold for the family of Holly Peranian, who would have turned 40 years old last month. Today, investigators renewed their call for the public's help with this investigation. Much of it centered on this T-shirt that you see behind me, which was among items found in the area of Brimfield, where Holly's remains were uncovered back in October of 1993. Take a closer look at it, with a very distinguishing color and Boston logo. Within the past 6 months, further forensic testing has been done, thanks to advances in testing procedures. Investigators want some very specific information related to it, and Holly Peranian's family hopes to finally have some closure.
Kohberger has yet to enter a plea, but his previous attorney said he believes he'll be exonerated. The indictment follows his December arrest at his family home in Pennsylvania. More than 45 days after Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found brutally murdered in this college house. According to court documents, Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath at the crime scene, and his white Hyundai Elantra seen driving here during a routine traffic stop.
Devastating crime. They compare, in the annals of crime, they compare absolutely with Jack the Ripper. Perhaps even worse, because they were quiet, deadly.
The Strangler's first victim was Anna Slessers, a 55-year-old divorcee, brutally beaten and strangled while a parade passed down her Back Bay Street. From June 1962 until January 1964, 10 more women would die the same way.
Believes he may have uncovered evidence that could lead to Molly's murderer. A lengthy article in the Worcester Telegram chronicles a custody investigation that ended with Gerald Battistoni serving up to 12 years for raping his girlfriend's daughter.
The former Tacoma and Seattle resident is a suspect in 36 sex killings in Colorado, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. And now he is being questioned in connection with 2 murders at a sorority house at Florida State University in Tallahassee.
As officials announce a suspect is now in custody. Multiple news outlets now reporting the suspect is 59-year-old Rex Hewerman of Massapequa Park.
Okay, everybody, let's get off the district. Let's put in another 30 seconds. That's Roger. And 008, hold us heading. I'm in the gate 004. How does that look? Looks good, Steve, and all systems are okay here. Winds are westerly at 10 knots. Okay, this is NASA 1 calling 10 seconds now. 10 seconds, roger. 0, 5, 4, 3, 2, 6. I've got a blowout. Number 3, introduce to 0. Engine out again, hold altitude. Correction, Alpha 4 is off track, flight emergency. Flight calling, can't hold it, she's breaking up, she's breaking.
Hey guys, I'm grateful to have you here. This is kind of going to be the Christmas show. Seem to be having some kind of a possible problem on the YouTube side of things. Let me go check to YouTube and see if we're actually on. Hold on 1 second. Somebody shoot me a message in chat to let me know too, if you could. Okay, it seems to be running, right? Okay. All right, hopefully it's running. I'm getting a strange little signal up here, but I'm on YouTube. Okay, we're good. All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate your little patience. Technical difficulties are part of our thing at Yellow Cottage Tales, even though they're usually not our fault. Things like this little strange error message popped up. So I had a little funny story for you guys today. So everybody in my family has COVID. I'm on my 4th day of COVID. My mom is having a really bad case of it, and she's in the hospital. It's pretty serious there. She's got COVID pneumonia. She has some heart failure related to it. Everything's stable right now. So I was there this morning, and when I first got there, it's just me and her in the room. She perkined up eventually, but at the moment, she's been alone for a while. You're not sure. She says hi, and she's kind of weak. And then she looks off into the distance. Her eyes get big, and she leans forward a little bit. And I'm like, "Oh my God, what is she seeing?" It's like she's seeing her grandmother coming. People see that on their deathbed and stuff like that. I'm sitting there thinking like, "Oh my God, what's she seeing?" And then her hand points, and she points, and I follow direction of her finger, and it goes to the big TV screen when they have these nice monitors on the wall. And I look, and it's Turtle Boy. He's on channel whatever it was, channel 5. I think they had a story on Turtle Boy. I started laughing. I'm like, because she knows this case. She doesn't follow Turtle Boy closely, but she knows this case. Obviously, I've done a lot on this channel on it, but I thought she was seeing her grandmother. Anyways, appreciate everybody. It's also seeing my mother in the hospital too. She told me a story. She had a hard night last night. A lot of the hospital staffs are very short staffed, and but she had a situation where she needed some help in the middle of the night, and finally, a man showed up. He was a young aide who was from Haiti, and my mother needed some help doing something. Let's just call it private and indelicate. And when you're in the hospital and very weak, you have no vanity anymore. You have no choice. And after he helped her with that task, he went the extra mile that he didn't have to do and showed her a lot of compassion. He offered to put lotion on her back and then put oil on her legs and spent time with her. And even though those things felt good, what really meant the most to her was the compassion that he showed. It was the compassion that he showed to her, and he was just a low-level aide, meant so much to her that she was crying. And actually, he came to check on her later, and she cried just at the sight of him. So and he just said, "I hope someday if I'm in that situation, someone shows the same thing to me." So these are the little people in their lives. They're not CEOs of companies. They're just regular people like us. And there's a lot of good people out there, and we have to not forget that. Just John O'Keefe was somebody like that, who, as a young man, was living the dream as a Boston cop, was a bachelor, enjoying his life, and then his sister died, and he was doing everything he could to help her husband raise their 2 little kids. But then the husband unexpectedly had a heart attack and died. And John stepped up, having no experience of being a father and not wanting to give up that bachelor lifestyle, didn't hesitate, stepped up and took custody of the children, and was in that house in Canton with them for 8 years before what tragically happened to him. And interestingly, it's that period that he became friends with many of the other people there, including Chris Albert Kevin Albert. He didn't know Brian, but he particularly became friends with Jen McCabe and Kerry Roberts, who understood the situation and were understood that you had two small children at home with a father who was unmarried and didn't have any experience raising children. So they became a very big part of the lives of those kids, and they still are to this day. So those are all things to just kind of keep in mind. Um, Before I get to the main part of this, I want to go closely over. I'm going to knock down every pin that's left on the conspiracy theory. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I'm not going to be saying things that I probably haven't said before, and some of the things I'll skim over a little bit because I've done them in more significant detail. But sometimes seeing it in a more concise way can also be more convincing too, because it's easy to get lost and all the other things that you look at in a case like that, like this, things that look like inexplicable and odd. And so you start saying, aha, well, there's something really weird going on here. Okay, but we're going to knock down all the fundamental pins on which the conspiracy theory stands. We really are. And I don't think there's going to be any room left for anything else. So we'll do it methodically. And we'll do it with receipts. I'm even going to show it to you on the screen. But I like this topic of receipts. I posted on it the other day. This is one of those things that it seems that now over the last month, Turtle Boy has made this expression very popular. So you can't get a turtle rider to post on this case without using the word receipts in their post, which is a step up from just doing all emoticons, which is, they're growing. But what is receipts? Okay. I think where they get this from is because Aiden always says, I always bring the receipts. And I don't think they really think too deeply about what he means by that. But the reality is no, he doesn't. And no, he shouldn't. Of course he doesn't. He's done his best work with sources over the years. I didn't follow Turtle Boy very closely. I didn't follow him at all, actually, until this case. But I've heard about things. I had heard of him, and I certainly am aware of some of the big cases that he's helped break. And he has helped break some the kind of cases that he says he's an award-winning journalist. He's really not. But maybe he should be, because some of those cases do kind of deserve. If there was such thing as a local Pulitzer, maybe he would deserve it. Some of those cases he didn't get proper credit for and did break them. And that reporting is done on sources, just like the big stories that are done at the New York Times and the Washington Post. You can't bring receipts of information that comes from a source, from someone who's talking to you. And especially most of the time, a lot of that stuff that has to be kept anonymous, right? So to protect that source. And that's just the way it is. So this idea of he always brings the receipts, no, he doesn't. And no, he shouldn't. He can't. Just like this summer, he said, trust me, the feds are on this. The feds are investigating this. What he was saying was, trust in my credibility. I have a track record. I can't tell you how I know this, but I have a track record. Trust me. That's not bringing receipts. That's asking you to trust his credibility. And he turned out to be accurate on it. Now, I had the same reports on the feds going back, not from the same sources, but going back to April. I didn't report it as much because I wasn't as confident in it. And I did report it once or twice, but excuse me, the COVID creeps up on me. I'm sure I didn't have anywhere near the sources that he has. In fact, it's going to be really interesting when we find out just what and who his sources are, I think, if we ever do. But that's a whole other story. But that's all he's saying. So this whole receipts thing is kind of crazy. Obviously, you want to be able to display documents and things like that when you can, or point to something. But when you're putting something in Twitter, do you have to, do you really want to have to stop and make a screenshot for everything? Anyways, let's not overdo the receipts things, because the issue is not receipts. The issue is credibility. Does someone have credibility? And you have to decide that over time. And someone, a newish channel like me, has to earn that over time. Now, I do a lot of looking in the mirror. And that probably surprises you looking at my image now. But no, I mean, you do a lot of soul searching. And you have to in this business, right? If you're reporting things on a crime case, you're talking about people that you don't know, investigators, potential witnesses, people that are accused of crimes or on trial. And so you always have to wonder, are you doing the right thing? What are the standards here? Do your reports hurt somebody? And that doesn't mean you shouldn't make reports that potentially hurt somebody, but where is that line? It's not always going to be 100% clear. And I don't think they can I've never been to journalism school, but I don't think they can teach it even in any kind of black and white way. You have to have some kind of judgment. But part of that is also just always regularly asking yourself if you're doing the right thing, if what you're doing is fair, if the information you're reporting, if you're getting the information you're getting is reliable, credible, accurate. I have made mistakes on this channel. The big one was this summer, and we started being accountable for that the very next night. Once we learned that information didn't seem to be accurate, and that was about the report of Colin that John supposedly called the police on Colin's drug dealing. That turned out to be false, and we've corrected it many times since. And I corrected it with a video that I created called "The Anatomy of a Smear." But you don't stop. You're always looking in the mirror to find out, are you doing, is the thing that I posted on Twitter accurate? Is it fair? And you never stop doing that. So, and I'm not going to stop doing that. And you look at yourself and you say, do you have selfish motives here? I'm not making money at this, so it wouldn't be financial motives. But you say, for instance, I think the thing that I would ask myself, am I just trying to win an argument? All right. Because we Irish can be like that, especially. We like to win an argument. And sometimes we're crazy about it. We'll blow our house. We'll blow our lives away just to win an argument. And it's foolish, but we can be like that, So am I guilty of that here? Because at the beginning, I was just really leaning conspiracy, but really well perched on the fence because there were certain things that didn't make sense. And I was only leaning conspiracy as long as 227, the search for how long to die in the cold, as long as that was presented to us as accepted fact by both sides, so accepted fact, as long as that was the case, well, there had to be something going on, right? But as soon as I knew that that was disputed, then I was like, oh, wait a minute. You got to really step back now and start questioning what's going on here. And then when we learned not only that it was disputed, but by an independent expert. And then when you looked up that expert, you found out she was one of the best in the business. And then when you tried to look up the defense's expert, you couldn't find anything on him. And that doesn't mean he wasn't right, but it's the reasonable position here. You don't have to be an expert yourself in forensic data. The reasonable position here was to say, all right, this is very much in dispute, this what's going on here. And I spent much of the summer researching something that that I'm sure none of you have any interest in, and I didn't, was data, which turns out to be an incredibly complicated thing. So whether it's phone data, location data, data related to the vehicles, all this stuff. I had a video back in like June, which kind of treated it as though, hey, you want the car's data, just print it out. It ain't like that. I was wrong. I was ignorant, and I've learned a lot. And if you start looking into this yourself, and I'm not expecting you to, you got more interesting lives than me. You shouldn't have to look into it. But I've spent much of the last 6 months researching this, not enough that I feel like I would ever want to talk to anybody as I'm a data expert. I'm not, but enough to say it's really, really complicated. So things like timestamps and all that stuff is not simple at all. It's not like just printing up a report and that's the way it is. It's just not. So let's start looking at the pins of the conspiracy that hold it up. Because there's a lot of odd stuff that you might have questions about. But there are some fundamental things. Excuse me a second. Again, I apologize. The COVID's been not bad to me, but it's a little bit of a head cold sometimes. All right. So the dog attack evidence. I'm not going to beat this to death because I've gone over it, but the medical examiners, there were two, my understanding, there's one that signed off, but two, I believe, that performed the autopsy, said they were shallow abrasions. So not the kind of things that would be the results of animal nails or teeth. It was something, the medical staff at the ER said something similar. In addition to that, I can tell you I could show you the document that from this summer, the defense and the prosecution agreed to send John's clothing this summer to an independent lab for testing, to test it for evidence of canine material. So biological stuff, saliva, skin cells, DNA, whatever, hair. And my understanding is that I from a very good source that this came back negative, but I can't show you the receipts on that. All right. So we'll find out at trial, right? But you can think about this, that those results are definitely back by now. So the defense knows about them. And if the defense, and you know what happens with the defense, and I don't blame them, but they're going to leak anything that can potentially help them, like the whole non-human hair thing. They'll leak it right away. If there was a test result that came back that said there was canine evidence found on John's clothing, that would have leaked last month by the defense. I mean, do you really doubt that? Does anybody really doubt that? It would have leaked. All right. So I think it's safe to conclude that the report that I have that they came back negative is reliable. You can kind of bank on that. Maybe not bet your life on it, but you can bank on it at this point. All right. The next thing would be John's injuries. And there's still huge questions that are made on this because it seems like the fatal injury was to the back of the head, 2-inch gash. It's like on the back, slightly towards the top. And it crushed small bones in the back of the head. And that's what led to the swelling on the front of the face. I don't think it says it. We don't have the actual autopsy yet. I didn't see anywhere where it said that was the cause of death. I don't think they list the cause of death. It does say that hypothermia was a contributing cause of death. So they probably is a combination of things, and they may not be able to pin it down on one thing. But certainly they did say that the injuries would have rendered him unconscious for all that time. So he's lying there unconscious because of the grave wounds to his head. And he had brain bleeding. So, and brain bleeding is a very, even a small one would be a very serious thing. And the kind of bleeding that he would have been experienced would have been very serious from an injury like that. So how does something like that happen? We're told there were no other injuries to his torso. Let me just check to make sure we're still coming in. You guys can still hear me good, right? Because I do hear somebody texting me. I probably should grab my phone, but all right. All right. So anyways, John's injuries were told by the defense that there were no other injuries other than the abrasions on the arm, a couple of scratches on the face, and the wound in the back of the head. Although, if you look closely at what is listed in the charging document, they describe traumatic injuries. That's the word, traumatic injuries to the midsection. So it actually is possible that he was struck in the midsection and he went back and hit his head on either the fire hydrant or the electrical box or something else. I don't know. We don't have the accident reconstruction yet. My understanding is, again, from a good source, that the state does have that. So it's not like they're still trying to figure out what happened. Now, whether it'll be convincing or not, we'll see. So John's injuries are still legitimately a source for people to be troubled by, to try to understand what happened to John. But they're not, at this point, a source of conspiracy theory, not by themselves. And it's kind of all that's there. All right. So then after the John's injuries, I've talked about this at length, the whole 227 search, the supposed phone deletions. I don't want to go too much into it. It's out the door. It's not even going to be brought up at trial. All right. Civil rights expert, I did a whole show on this recently. People are falsely saying they're going to testify for or their testimony is going to help the defense. That's absurd. You think that the prosecution is bringing in a civil rights senior expert to testify for the defense? If you find yourself listening to people saying like that, you maybe have to start asking more questions. And I'm sorry, I think that's part of the problem in this case is that people don't ask just common sense questions. you're not talking about stuff that you teach in college or something like that. These are just, if you're trying to buy a car, if you're trying to buy a piece of property, you have to sometimes be able to ask common sense questions when people tell you something. And a lot of people online that have their own YouTube channels or on Twitter put things out there that you need to start questioning. Some people. All right. So when somebody tells you that that a prosecution expert is going to testify in a way that helps the defense, you need to start asking questions. All right. I went over this last week, and he's clearly not doing that. He's very clearly going to say that the timestamp of 227 does not mean what Rich Green is trying to tell you. The defense expert is trying to tell you that it means. In addition, you have Jessica Hyde, the independent expert that they hired, who is one of the best of the best. So, and why? And as I've said, why are they not going to even bring this up in court? Because they're going to have Jen McCabe, who helped raise these kids, who's still close to these kids, who's a soccer mom, who's not guilty of any other crimes in her life. She's going to be sitting 10 feet away from them, really close, so close you can smell fear, anxiety. This is not going to be like to other people here. She's an image on a screen, a name, a ghost, a fictional thing that they've conjured. But to them, she's going to be a real person sitting with them, a mother of 4 kids. And for the defense to try to suggest that she was searching at 227 for how long to die in the cold, under the theory that John was still in the house alive and that she knew that their plan was to put him out into the yard to die of the cold. If they do that, that jury is going to turn on them in a way that they're going to tune out those defense lawyers for the rest of the way. Because there's no way, only a sociopath would do something like that, not a soccer mom, okay, with no incentive, no motive to do any of that stuff. It just isn't possible. And they're just not going to buy it, and the defense isn't going to try to sell it. Same thing with things like phone deletions. There were no deletions. Your phone is constantly making temporary files that eventually get put into a database. You know, all these databases that are in your phone. And once it's moved there, the temporary file is deleted. That's going on invisibly in your phone all the time. Now, when you print up the report later with software, you might get something that says file XYZ has been deleted. Now, any forensic expert, and I'm sure Rich Green, whoever he is, probably is even smart enough to understand that that's what's going on. But he's getting paid to provide a little bit of doubt. And once he does that, he will get called on. He doesn't have to lie. He just has to say, well, hey, I ran it through the software and I got these deletions. And then he just lets Alan Jackson do what he can with it, right? So that's what they're kind of shooting for here. And if it works, he suddenly gets, you're going to find this coming up in all kinds of cases all over the world, and he'll be in demand, and he'll easily make a lot of money doing that. Just like a lot of doctors become professional experts to testify in trials, and they no longer treat patients. That's all they do. I've been in a trial where I saw a doctor that did that. So there's a chance they would try to do that, right? And try, but I just think they won't, because if they try to portray Jen as a sociopath, it's not going to stick, and it's going to backfire and have very harmful causes to Karen's defense. So I don't see them doing it. Another big question. This was Turtle Boy's main question: is we've gone over this, but why didn't the Canton Police Department find taillight pieces when they did find the cocktail glass pieces? And that was in the daylight. Well, the Canton police were looking, even though it was during a snowstorm. Meanwhile, the Massachusetts State Police, when they showed up with the CERT team, they were able to quickly find the red pieces of taillight that were there. Well, the reason is because people may not understand, but in Massachusetts, a suspicious death is automatically going to be go into the custody of the state police for investigation, unless this is in Boston, Worcester, or Springfield. Those 3 police departments have their own homicide task force. No other city, none of the other towns or smaller cities do. So if it's a suspicious death, it automatically will be taken over by the state police automatically. So those Canton cops that were there knew this. So they knew from the moment John was taken away in the ambulance that eventually they knew he was going to die. And as soon as that was official, then this would go over to the state police. Now, so you're doing a little bit of investigation, especially it's during a snowstorm. So there's certain types of evidence that might be perishable, and that's why, for instance, they saved the blood that they found in the snow. But you notice they had to save it in little party cups that some neighbors had brought out to them. That's why they don't do those investigations. They don't have the kits in their car or the training. Now, those guys meant well, and I think those are good cops. They were doing a good job, but they're not equipped to do a proper investigation like that. And they only were doing that because that evidence was going to be snowed over and perishable perish by the time the state police got there. So they were doing their jobs trying to preserve that form. They were able to find the cocktail glass pieces because the snow around John had melted. There was so basically where at the time John was struck, which was about 12:30, there was no snow or maybe a dusting of snow there. And so he ended up lying on, so that snow that he was lying on, if there was any there, melted. And as the snow fell around him, he was still alive. And at the time that he was taken to the hospital, his body temperature was in the low 80s. So his body was still melting a lot of the snow that was coming down. It didn't stop enough from accumulating on top of his clothing, enough to kind of help obscure him. And there was a few inches of snow on him when the women found him at 6, and it had to be brushed off. But the cocktail glass was, once John was removed, was lying right there in the grass, in the glass, the pieces of the cocktail glass. So that was easy for them to find. Why did it end up there? Well, the cocktail glass was in his hand when he got knocked back. So the glass, just simple physics, the momentum that's put on the body is still in the glass. And if you let go of the glass subsequent to being hit, it still has that same momentum or similar to that. And so it's going to end up in a similar place. Meanwhile, the fragments of taillight, that's different. Assuming that happened from striking John, that would have exploded on the street right there, wherever the contact was. And we do know that the street was unfortunately plowed. Now, that's a whole other story there too, the lucky stuff, right? But it was plowed. So those taillight pieces all ended up inside a plow bank. Now, even if there's only a couple inches of snow when the street was plowed, that still makes a significant plow bank. And the Canton police were never going to bring a shovel to a plow bank. Never. They would never do that. They were going to wait for the state police, let them do their job. And so the state police, when they eventually come in, I'm sure they set up lights and do their professional job. And you can see video of this. It's pitch dark. It's reported to be 5:45 when they found the piece. I don't know exactly what time they started. So let's say somewhere between 5 and 5:45. And you can see in the video all these guys walking out with shovels to dig in the snow. Because by that time, a lot more had fallen. I think about 12 inches, and it was still falling. So they went out and they found it that way. But that's why that the Canton police didn't find that. To me, if that's your main fundamental reason for believing there's a conspiracy, I don't find it a problem. They were never going to find those taillight pieces. Because they were never going to dig. The Canton police were never going to dig inside that snowbank. Another thing that people obviously have a lot of problem with is Brian not coming out of the house. I did it first too, but then I realized that the first responders came in with no sirens. That's typical for all of these towns driving at that time of the night in the dark. They don't want to wake up the residents, and there's no other traffic, so they don't. They just have on their flashing lights. Keep in mind, it was during a blizzard. If you've heard that call that Karen's phone picked up and was recorded over John's voicemail because she was calling John when the women found him that morning and left the phone on the seat, you can hear the wind howling. The wind was howling. So the storm was really raging at that point, and that would have blocked out a lot, any of the much of the sound. So if so, it looks to me, oh yeah, so it was 72 feet. So from where John was found to the door was 72 feet. So I don't know what the measurement would be to the second floor windows where the Albert's bedroom was. Which was actually a little bit closer to that part of the yard. But so let's say it was 40 or 50 feet. That's what I've always said. So the Karen is making a lot of noise on the front lawn, but she's about 50 feet away from where their windows are, and the howling wind is going to block out any screaming that she does. So whatever the reason, Brian and his wife didn't wake up. They also had three phone calls. Jen called her sister, so Brian's wife, twice, and then Brian once. Eventually, she had to go into the house after they had taken John away and up to the bedroom and woke them up. Now, it may trouble you that Brian didn't hear any of this and wake up and come out, but people sleep heavy. It's that time of morning, especially if you've been sleeping for a while and you wake up and then people that our age, sometimes we wake up a little while and we go back to sleep. That seems to be when you have your soundest sleep is like 5, 6 in the morning. So you have to weigh that data versus all the other data that really is powerfully against Karen. And if all you're going to have is the fact that Brian didn't come out of the house in that 10 minutes of that stuff that was going on outside, it's not very powerful. All right, so let's get to the data stuff. I want to go over health app data versus GPS. I want to bring the receipts. You guys like receipts. So let's, because I'm bringing the receipts, you have to give me a moment to actually put them on the screen. All right. Let's make sure you can. Oh, for some reason this is not showing up on the screen, is it? All right, I'm pulling this up on the screen and I'm not sure. All right, there we go. According to Rich Green's defense analysis of the health app, I wanted you to see these times so you can have them in your head because it's important. So between 12:21 and 12:24, let's be exact. So between 12:24 and 37 seconds, John ascended and descended 3 flights of stairs. And he also has him traveling, I forget what it is, like 87 meters or something like that. So I'm not sure the exact number, but they have him traveling a certain amount of steps at that time. But importantly, going up and down 3 flights of stairs. So you would have to be in a house to go up and down 3 flights of stairs, right? So now let's look at this. According to Waze, John O'Keefe punched in the search for 34 Fairview at 12:20 from Dedham Street. So let's go to another screen to show you this. I want to go to Google Maps. Hold on a second. All right, we'll go to the waterfall one. All right. Make sure you guys can see this. All right, so so everybody's drinking down at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. And that's when they invite John and Karen back to 34 Fairview, where the after hours is. So you can see the blue line here. Here's the path. This is what Google pulled up. I'm not saying that this is the path that they took. This is just what Google Maps pulled up. In fact, they didn't take this path. I believe they actually went up this road over here. Yeah. All right. So just to give you an idea of the time and place stuff here. So let me pull over to Dedham here. All right. So this over here is Dedham Street. If you can see this here, if we can see, I'll put it the center. The center is Canton Historical Society. All right. So they obviously started out maybe having an idea where Fairview was, but they weren't sure. So at 12:20, John put in Waze. You all know what Waze is, right? 34 Fairview. So we don't know exactly where they were on Dedham Street, but we can imagine they went this way and they got to Dedham and they were like, all right, shit, we don't know where we're going. So they punch it in. So let's just assume it was down here around the Canton Historical Society. So then you travel up this way and you come down Cedar Crest, which we know they do, and they end up on Fairview. And so from that distance there, it's about a mile. And so that normally would be about 3 minutes. Now, keep in mind, Karen's at least double the legal limit for alcohol, and John has a drink in his hand. So they're not exactly speeding to Fairview. It's unfamiliar territory for them. And then also, even we'll see in a second, when you look at the GPS data, it looks like they drove past Fairview, the turnoff. They must have missed it and then had to turn around. I think I'll show you that in a second. But so again, that search was made at 12:20. All right, so it's not, and that's got to be accurate, because it's not like if, for instance, if they were not getting a good enough signal, Waze would not have given them directions. All right, so that's accurate. At 12:20, they're on Dedham Street. Okay, John's not walking up and down the stairs. He's on Dedham Street, and they're putting in Waze. That's Rich Green doesn't want you to know that, but that's beyond any reasonable doubt. Let me go back to the other screen. All right. So make sure you can see it right. All right. So all right. So let's just go back again, just to make sure it's clear. So according to Rich Green, the defense forensic data analyst, he's concluded that at between 12:21 and 12:24, 37 seconds, John ascended 3 flights of stairs. Is that accurate? But according to Waze, John searched at 12:20 from Dedham Street how to get to 34. Now, it's a little over a mile, and according to Google, that's a 3-minute drive. And they actually, based on the GPS, missed the turn and had to turn around and come back. So that's 100% consistent with the idea of them arriving. And you'll see from the police data in a second. Actually, we'll show it right here. So these are receipts. I'll send anybody this document if you don't have it. Please email me at leetskev@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to send it to you. Other people have been asking me, and I always reply. You'll get the receipts. All right. So according to the GPS, the phone continues down Cedar Crest Road, going by Fairview Road at 12:23 in 46 seconds. So pretty much exactly 3 minutes. And then it stops in the area of 51 Cedar Crest Road, reverses direction. Now, that does not mean that the car went in reverse. It means he's saying the phone reversed direction. So you're looking at the phone GPS on the map. So what that means is they turned around. And now they take a right on a Fairview, and that's when they get there at the same time as the truck that Ryan Nagel is in. They take that right at 12:24 and 18 seconds. All right. Again, let's go back to Rich Green. He's got John climbing stairs. Sorry about that. John climbing stairs between 12:21 and between 12:24 and 37 seconds. All right. So where does he have time? So according to this, they didn't even get, according to GPS. And actually, all right, so they pull up in front of the driveway. All right, I'm sorry. So they first turn on to Fairview at 12:24 and 18 seconds. They briefly kind of stop in front of the driveway, as Ryan Nagel's testified. Then they pull up to the edge of the property near the fire hydrant. Maybe I'll pull up that picture after for you, but that's at 12:24 and 40 seconds. That's 3 seconds after the edge of the time zone where Rich Green says they went up and down stairs. So that's already after the time that Rich Green says they went up and down stairs. Waze also measures, in addition to your location, it measures your movement in meters. And there was a slight movement measurement made at 12:25, but there was basically no movement. And then that's it. It stopped showing any movement until 6:15 a.m. So this is kind of important. I'm going to go over the other parts of the GPS in a second, and we'll get to the map. But I also want to, all right, so you have two sources on the GPS. First, the troopers early on looked at John's Waze, and which is GPS based, and in this case, both of them off John's phone. But it's two different, and it's also two separate data streams. So one is what Waze recorded, and that's what they initially went by. Then they had then they also had the raw GPS data to go by, and they put out a report on that in this past spring, and they made it public to the public in their rebuttal to a defense motion in September. And so we saw for the first time in September. Now, the thing about GPS, I want to just talk for a second. The thing about GPS is that it measures your location and it has a margin of error. The margin of error is based on signal strength. Okay? So where you're sitting right now, if you have your phone with you, if you pull up an app that you can look at the GPS, it'll give you a location, but it measures that. It'll also give you a margin of error, and that's based on signal on the signal strength. And it can be interfered with. For instance, if you're out on the road, you can go by a tall building or a tall tree that can interfere with it. And so, but that's measurable. You always know what the margin of error is. So it's not like we look at a certain time here, so 12:30 and 32 seconds, and we say, it's not like we're looking at it and saying, well, we don't know what the margin of error is. No, we know what it's always recorded continuously for every ping that's recorded. Now, normally, the margin of error is about 15 feet. And that doesn't mean that, so when you look at that data point in a map and it shows you in a certain location, you draw a 15-foot radius around that, and you're just as likely to be anywhere within that circle. And you're no more likely to be anywhere else within that circle. But if you look at a bunch of those points stringed together, you can find out exactly the path with a high degree of probability where you're going. But you also, again, that circle will vary based on the signal strength. And so sometimes you'll get a variation on that. Now, I want to show you exactly what those were. Well, actually, I'll read them to you first. This is just on this. So the state says, and this is a little confusing, the state says there were only 3 seconds during which John could have been in the house based on GPS. That's the way they word it, and it's not a good way to word it, because the reality is there is no time that John could have been in that house, and it's deceiving. Let me explain exactly why the state says it that way. I'm going to show it to you here, and you get a much better understanding of how this works. But I'm going to read it first, and then we'll show you the maps. So at 12:25:30, so at the 30-second mark of 12:25, where John was, the degree of accuracy changes from 15 feet to 108 feet because the signal got weaker. So technically, if you were to just look at that ping, that data point in isolation, he is just as likely to be anywhere within that 108 feet. And that's enough to include the house because the door is 72 feet away. So if you were to just if that was the only data point you had, you could say he was in the house. He could have been, no, you would say he could have just as likely have been in the house as anywhere else within 108 feet of that. 1 second later, there's another ping. And that one, the degree of accuracy is 200 feet. So the signal got even weaker. So that's the range around it. I'll show you these on a map in a second. Then at 12:25:32, the signal gets better, and now it's down to 29 meters, so 95 feet. And then at 12:25:33, it's down to 88 feet, which still puts it within the range of the front door. But then by 12:25:34, it's down to 72 feet, and then it drops back to about 15 right after that. So there was a 3 or 4 second period where something was blocking the signal, maybe heavy cloud cover during the storm, whatever, maybe they were just positioned outside a blowing branch or something that interfered with the signal, but it was only for those 3 or 4 seconds. So let's go to the map and take a look at this straight on the map. Hold on one second. This is, I can send anybody this document. Many of you have already seen it. This was released in September. It is a prosecution document. All right. Make sure you can see this. All right. So here is 34 Fairview. And you can see the points coming up along the street on the right. That's where they pulled up by. You see the driveway there. And so Ryan Nagel would have pulled up behind them and parked before the driveway. And it looks like they probably briefly stopped near the driveway, but then pull up to the edge of the property there for whatever reason. And you can see these data points. Now, this is one particular point here. This is one of the points that I mentioned where the signal dropped enough that the margin of error extends enough that it reaches the house. So this was one of those points. And so that's what it looks like. And I'll scroll down, you'll see a couple of the other ones. Now this is here where it looks like that's probably the one that was 200 feet. And you can see the entire house and even a little bit of the neighbor's house is in there. So that's when the signal got the weakest. And get to the next one. Here it is here. It looks like that might be hitting the front door of Fairview, possibly. Again, you're talking only a second. And I think there's one more. Yeah, and that one right there. So it's just kind of barely hitting the front door. But that's how it works. This is a margin of error. Let's see if there's any more. It's kind of just hitting the corner. And here it's nowhere near reaching the front door. So there was a period for about 3 seconds, maybe 4 seconds, where the signal strength dropped off. And we'll get this out. All right. So I don't know if that makes things clearer, but I think it kind of should. And so then one question that would come up would be, so why is there a discrepancy between the health app data and the GPS data, right? So which is more accurate, right? My first thought was, well, obviously a health app data is not designed for location. It's designed to help you exercise, whereas GPS is designed for determining location with precision. But when I looked it up though, the health app data actually uses primarily GPS. It can go to a cell signal if the GPS is cut off. But it was probably getting the same exact GPS information. But what I realized is that there actually is no discrepancy, as far as I can tell, between the health app and the GPS. It's not like the health app is saying that they weren't where they were. The health app is not like, so the GPS is saying that they were driving along the road a mile away, when Rich Green is saying he was going up and down stairs. It's not like Rich Green said that his data showed that at that time John was at 34 Fairview. No, it's tricky. This is why it's tricky, right? All actually he said was that it shows an elevation change that's the equivalent of 3 flights of stairs. That's it. And that he walked X amount of steps. But clearly, what he was talking about during those time periods, they were driving. Now, there may be times where they drove slow enough that the health app interpreted that as walking. We know that it looks like they turned around on Cedar Crest Street, so maybe that was part of the problem. There's no discrepancy here. This is just an interpretation that's put by the defense on this data to create doubt. It's nothing more than that. There's no actual discrepancy here. The data shows John did not go in the house. So does that prove that Karen did this? No. But it proves John did not go in the house, get attacked by a dog, get beat up by a 17-year-old kid that wasn't there. That stuff just didn't happen. And this stuff is really kind of easy if you take your time and go through all of this evidence. You might say, well, why hasn't the state done that for us? Because they do that at trial. That's when they'll be doing this. They don't need to do it now. And they don't, right or wrong, it is there's a reason trials aren't done in public, right? This isn't the Salem witch trials, that wouldn't be a good way to do it. But the state also just doesn't care about that. They care about wins and losses, and that's it, and they want to win a trial, and that's all they really care about. So unfortunately, a lot of innocent people get smeared in a case like this. And that's what's happened. The Alberts, the McCabe's, many others have been innocently smeared, and had their lives upended because of this. And it's just, for what? We know what happened now at this point. The evidence is beyond any reasonable dispute. This is just the evidence that I'm pointing out here. There's going to be a lot more evidence that comes out at trial. We know things about deleted ring videos. That's going to come out. We don't know what other video evidence is going to be there. We know that there are multiple sources that got video. There's no gap in the library video. You can look at the map. I'll bring it up again if you want. She went home another way. That's going to tell you. It's the library video, like any camera system now, is motion triggered. At that time, nobody drove by the library, so there's no gap. That stuff just didn't happen. A lot of this stuff is just show that's made up, that's put on now to create doubt, and they're putting on this trial in front of the motions, because these motions are publicized. Normally, nobody would follow that stuff in a case, and they've done a brilliant job at first getting Aiden to build this into the public attention, and then everybody's watching those cameras in court. But most of that stuff is never going to get brought up in trial because it's even easily rebutted, and no jury's going to fall for it. Unless you have somebody end up on the jury that has been brainwashed by what's going on over the last 6 months, the last 8 months, or whatever, which that is their hope, that somebody will get through. And if that's the case, then it doesn't matter what arguments are made because they've already had their mind made up. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't other things to be worried about, critical of in this case. Is the investigation bulletproof? Was it shoddy? I don't know. There are things that look a little suspect right now, but the troopers haven't had a chance to defend themselves. They can't. So I don't think they probably watch. I'm sure they don't watch my channel, and I don't think they probably watch Turtle Boy either. I don't think they pay attention to this shit. And I wouldn't advise them to. It's not good for your health. Just focus on your job. And I think that's probably what they do. But if there is shoddiness in the investigation, I hope that's exposed during trial and corrected. But I also hope that we'll get a better explanation of a lot of these things. And I think some of this stuff that looks shoddy now is really just tricks by the defense. So one of the things, for instance, that Olivia posted today on was, and people have made a big deal about this before, Turtle going back to the beginning. Why didn't they tow the vehicle from? They had to get the vehicle from Karen's parents' house in Dighton, which is 45 minutes away. Why did they tow that to Dighton? To Canton. What? Now, I don't know the answer to that because I'm not on the state police. I don't know what the usual policy is. We may find out that the normal standard procedure is to tow the vehicle the closest police station to the crime scene. I don't know. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe it isn't. But why is it suspicious? It's not really suspicious. Like if you're trying to rig, if you're the state police, even just a few guys on the state police, and you're trying to rig a case, wouldn't it be easier to bring it back to a state police a state police garage where you can control everything? Wouldn't that be easier to control than to try to bring it back to another station that you're maybe less familiar with? I know that people would say, well, the Alberts are like crime lords there and they run the Canton police and they would control that station. But some of this stuff is getting absurd. And I've talked to people that are friends with the Canton officer who is the conspirators like to point to. His name is Brian Wanless. Everybody in this story's name is Brian, every other person. But he's was called in suspiciously to take apart this taillight, I guess, so that Trooper Proctor could race to the scene impossibly and faster than speed of light time, because they couldn't have got to Canton earlier than 5:05, 5:10, 5:15, and by 5 o'clock the news crews and the CERT team was setting up down there. So I don't know when this could have been done, but so they call in this officer Wanless, a Canton cop who also owned an auto body shop. They say, well, we need you to take off this taillight so we can get some pieces here. It's crazy. But talk to someone who's friends with Officer Wanless's son, and the son's like, this is cuckoo. There's nothing going on. There's just there's nothing suspicious here. So it's just one of the many aspects of this story that's just not going to be a factor in the trial. And it's just a red herring kind of thing that people chase now because everything is floated out there. Even as far as is Proctor, was he compromised in some kind of way? Did he have a conflict of interest here? Well, it should be understood that the overall command of this investigation was by Lieutenant Brian Tully. Proctor, and right below him was Buchanan, and right below that was Proctor. So I don't think Proctor led this investigation. He just wrote some reports and did certain parts of the investigation. I don't think he was the lead investigator, and it was him and Buchanan that were going together to interview people, and Buchanan was outranked him. So you'd have to say that Buchanan is in on it too, right? And probably Tully. So how about, no one has shown any motive for any of this stuff. Proctor's has a connection or knows Chris Albert's wife. That's the only connection. There's no connection to the McCabe's. That was falsely pointed to. It's just a bunch of silliness. So, would have been should they have ideally found someone different than Proctor to be part of that team? I don't know. Maybe they should just say, let's not get anybody from Canton, because if you're going to get somebody from the same town, there's more likely to be some kind of 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon connection. But so maybe they should be more careful in the future on things like that. It also makes sense that if you're doing an investigation that's in Canton, especially during a blizzard, maybe it's not surprising you call on someone that lives in that area. I don't know how it works, but matched up against the other evidence, I don't find anything suspicious here. There was no opportunity for them to. The only time they could have got to the SUV, Karen's SUV, was after the tow. And like I said, that was not till after 5, and there was just no time to plant evidence. Another thing that Olivia brought up recently was, excuse me, I got to let out one of the dogs. I'll keep talking though. Was that over the days after the initial investigation, they went back and found more pieces of taillight. And she says, aha, why weren't these properly documented? Well, I don't know if they were properly documented. I don't know what the rules require, but they must have been documented. Otherwise, how would the defense know about it, right? And I know Alan Jackson brought those up at one of the motions I think maybe in September. But again, if there was something shady going on here, why would Trooper Proctor have documented at all that he was picking up those pieces? Doesn't make sense. You already have the main pieces. They found the big piece. Those little pieces didn't add anything to the evidence, really. They didn't change the fundamental evidence. And if you're going to do something shady, I mean, is the idea they're going to keep going back and planting these things? That's just super risky and unnecessarily risky. Sorry, other dog's going to go out too. But even if you think it was somehow helpful to go back and put those pieces there, if it's suspicious, why document it at all? Just add that to your report later, right? Say they were all found that day. But obviously they didn't do that because the defense is aware that those pieces were found at a later time. So there's nothing, again, you have to ask, those are simple questions that anybody can ask. It doesn't take a bartender to ask it. It takes anybody of just common sense asking questions to just say, all right, how does the defense know about these pieces and each day that they were found? How do they even know about it? Well, obviously it was documented. And then you say to yourself, well, if they were being documented, if they were doing something suspicious, why were they documenting? So it sounds to me like the only thing the defense is even complaining about here is that I guess they're saying that each time they found another piece, the CERT team should have come out and taken photos and mapped exactly where it was found. I don't know. Maybe that's the way they're supposed to do things. I really don't know. But to me, it's nothing even remotely suspicious about it. So what else was some of the odd stuff that people have looked at? Oh, yeah, just another idea. So, we've all listened to the 911 call that was recorded over Karen's phone onto the voicemail of John. This is how people interpret evidence. I've seen people insist that Jen is guilty of a crime because when she called the dispatcher, she said there's a man down in the snow. That cold bitch, that was her friend out there. Why didn't she tell the dispatcher that was her friend? Are you people mad? The people that say this stuff, I don't know, man. I hope you're not doing brain surgery. I don't know what you do for a living. I hope you're not doing something serious where other lives depend on it. Because that's batshit crazy. You think that Jen is not calling a friend. She's calling a 911 dispatcher. You're going to say, oh, my friend John is down in the snow? That's crazy. It's absurd to even think that. And I think what happens is that people are just already determined for there to be a conspiracy here. And they're so determined that they start looking at every little thing and trying to spin it in a way that must be suspicious. So I realizing that, I understand that no matter what Jen had done that day, no matter how she did it, people would spin it to say that was evidence of she's a cold-hearted, evil bitch. It's crazy. It's crazy. And if you thought that, and I've offended you, I'm not sorry. I don't care. I don't care anymore. All right, dude. I don't know. I don't have time and patience. I don't mind for all of us to make mistakes about things or not be too sure. It's very reasonable for people to, hi, George. Hello, my friend. George is, if someone gets upset, George is very sensitive. Both the dogs are. So I didn't mean to raise my voice. Sorry, George. Hi, George. You're a good boy. Everything's okay. All right. But I mean, it's just nutty to some of the things that people think, or they think that there's somehow evidence that Jen is guilty because she was not freaking out when she called 911. It's just crazy. I don't really understand how people think this way. I don't draw any I heard that call, listened to it with the headphones up. I didn't conclude anything. How could you tell anything? Everything was normal. There was nothing. I'm trying to listen. For instance, like I was trying to find, listen to, did I hear sirens coming? Because we had been told that there were no sirens, and that made sense to me. But I was like, oh, well, maybe we'll hear them. And because the call's 4 minutes long, and I think the 911 aspect of it was there for the last 3 minutes of it, and you don't hear any sirens coming. And we know the first cops got there fairly quick, but You don't hear any sirens. So those are the kind of things that I listen for. But to be able to tell from the tone of somebody's voice if they're actually were conspiring murder, it just doesn't make sense. The whole conspiracy is kind of absurd. It's very absurd. The idea that they've killed John inside the house. He's not dead. Okay, they know he's not dead. For some reason, they don't want to. They come up with a plan to let the cold finish him off. They couldn't just. He's unconscious, but they couldn't just hold his mouth and his, like Tony Soprano did with Christopher. So they decide. I don't know what they decide. They're going to keep him in the house for a few hours, wait till Lucky's done plowing, and then drop him off out there. They send Jen home, telling her, "Yeah, we're going to kill him in the cold later." And this person who's never committed a crime before goes home to search on Google. How long is that going to take? It's nutty. And then they're going to drop this poor guy on alive, where he might still be revived. They're going to drop him on their own lawn, not on the street, not in the gutter, not on the neighbor's lawn, on their own lawn. In fact, they're close enough to the neighbor's lawn that they could have just. Looks like it's maybe only 10 feet away or something like that. They could have just easily gone over there and then be like, "Hey, it was the neighbor's lawn," right? They didn't do that. It's just no part of the conspiracy makes any kind of sense. I don't think there's much left for any rational, and that's without even reporting other things, information that's come my way. A lot of information isn't coming in, and I'm trying to be very careful about vetting things and also occasionally not reporting things that I shouldn't report. All right. I'm going to look at a couple of questions, but I'm not going to stay on late like I do sometimes, guys, because like I said, I do have COVID. I've only had it for 4 days, so I'm still kind of in the middle of it and feeling pretty good, but no sense tiring myself out too much. Going back, Carol, hi, Merry, and I just again, this will be the Christmas episode, so Merry Christmas, everybody. Mark Sweeney, I don't care anymore. Mark Sweeney, you are one of the odd ones here. I mean, I'm sorry. There are some people that just I see you on Twitter all the time, and I don't know, dude. I'm not gonna say anything else about it. I mean, I don't think there's any evidence that can ever penetrate. You're one of those people that this whole case is a matter of faith now, capital F. It's a matter of faith. And video of the event would not change your mind. Because this is your crucifixion. This is a matter of faith to you, everything that happened here. So Carol, hi, Merry Christmas to you. Jules, hey, Kevin never emailed me. He told me a ring cam was turned off at the house. This happened. Slatherings, I'm not entirely. Hey, Thomas saw George. Hey, Tom, that's my friend Tom Fleming, who, like I said, another one of the people that aren't the big shots that run hospitals and stuff like that. He kind of could have been at one point in his life, but he ended up going in the Army, and he actually, the little guys step up sometimes. I don't mean little size-wise, the unknowns. He was a grunt, and he was driving a fuel truck to a parade downhill, and the brakes went out. And they were going for a couple miles downhill towards this crowded parade. His commanding officer was in the seat next to him panicking, and Tom kept his cool and managed to find a way to drive it onto a safe way through and landed on a lawn in a way that didn't hit anybody. And it wasn't done. I think there was a small fire there or something going on. And again, this was a fuel truck, and the commander ran like hell, but Tom got a fire extinguisher and was fighting the fires on this fuel truck to keep it from blowing up in this downtown area. And guys nearby were rolling him down backup cans of fire extinguishers. He could keep doing it, but he ended up getting the keys to the city. I don't know what town that is in Germany. So Will Scott, hi. Kerry, hi. Carol says they all knew each other, period. I don't believe in guilt by association. Conspiracy theories have no clue. Go by the evidence. That's all I'm saying. All right. I don't rule out the possibility that, so for instance, let's say somebody that the Alberts know has some dirt on one of the troopers, like really destructive dirt. So they contact him and they say, you got to take care of this for us. But you really have to start looking down everything that happened and say, does any of it looked like they were acting in any kind of a conspiratorial way? And it doesn't. Nothing really makes sense. So, for instance, when the trooper goes out to Dighton, he calls ahead. He's going out to the SUV, and we're assuming here that in order for there to be a conspiracy, he has to. He has to tamper. Somebody has to tamper with the taillight pieces and take them and plant them at the scene. Without that, there's no conspiracy. All right, because they were found there. So, if this is a conspiracy and that was his mission, why does he call ahead to the Dighton police while he's on the way and say, "Can you go out and inspect this vehicle?" So the Dighton cop gets there first. Why would you do that? Wouldn't you want to get there first to take control of that scene? Maybe even if there's a chance, do your tampering right then and there. I mean, you wouldn't do that. So it's just in every step of this case, there's things like that where it just doesn't even make any sense. Yeah, Will said, yeah, there are railroad tracks in the backyard, right? So it would have you could have dropped them there. Snow Queen says, "Hey Kevin, where are those threats?" I guess she's saying this skeptically. All right, I'll tell you. The threats were the guy deleted them a couple nights ago, but I did save them. I'm not going to show you them, but I'll tell you his name. His name was Jim Z, or at least that's his Facebook name. And I woke up to messages, him saying, "Your day is going to come. You're going to meet me face to face. You think you're a tough guy," and all this. They were threatening messages. You're saying it's coming right now, or coming very soon. I don't have them in front of me, but there were specific threats. When I looked at his Facebook page, he had an image of a rabbit on there that said, "The fun stopped when the rabbit got a gun," or something like that. So this is what you're dealing with. So who wants to who got into doing a YouTube channel to deal with stupid shit like that? It's not the first threats I've got. And maybe people on the other side of this have, who knows? I don't know. Maybe Turtle's gotten threats too. I'm not comparing myself to Turtle. He's got a big channel. I'm not trying to do that. I'm saying threats can go from crazies from every side, right? But I'm just saying I legitimately got those threats, and they were troubling. Snow Queen, you know what? You can go F off. You don't believe me about the threats. You're also probably one of the ones that doesn't believe I have cancer. I don't really give a fuck what you think about anything. All right? We don't even know what your name is. We know what my name is. You're a Snow Queen. Tell us what your name is. Yeah, so he's got to scream up there. Right, this is what you're dealing with. This is one of the things that we found with this cult here. It's like a religion, and there are people that are completely irrational, and no matter what evidence you give them, no matter how much, they're not the biggest thinkers in the world, anyways. Guys like Sweeney, you can't really walk them through something ABC's not really able to figure it out, anyways. So there's kind of no point. But for most regular people looking at this, they have legitimate questions because they see a lot of odd things. And if you walk them through, they understand it. And eventually, everyone that I've encountered, and even if they don't, if there's something that I say they're not sure, they go back and they check the documents themselves. And if they ask me for the documents, I send it. And I don't tell them where to go in the documents. They can read what they want and they draw their own conclusions. But they always end up on the other side of the fence. Always. Invariably. I've never seen anybody go from the guilty side of the fence to the innocent side, except if at the very beginning, obviously, once the conspiracy theory broke. But over the last 3, 4, 5 months, I don't see anybody switching to the other side. Nobody. I have not seen a single person. And again, I will get things wrong, but I don't tell you lies. All right. Let's looking through the comments. Kathy, I'm not sure who's somebody picking on Jules. I'm not sure. but Jules is pretty feisty and fearless, and she can definitely take care of herself. I know that. And Jules is someone that originally was on the other side of the fence and came over because she's very strong-minded and independent, follows her own lead, and looks at the evidence. Challenged me with the questions very angrily at first. It's not that I convinced her; it's just I gave her the evidence. That's it. You don't have to be the most articulate person in the world. You just have to show someone the evidence, and they'll get there themselves. Hi, Judy. Merry Christmas to you. Let's see, nine. So she left this comment at 9:09. It's 9:14. So that's only 5 minutes ago. So hi, Judy. Merry Christmas. Thank you as always for being here. TB said, I'm sorry, Slathering says, if TB has all the evidence to get Karen off, why is she still in trouble? This is big news. Actually, Carol says my son thinks Karen is guilty. Because when I first spoke to Carol on the phone this summer, unless it's a different son, Carol, you were telling me how your son heard 3 days after John's death that it happened in the house. So that sounds like maybe someone else who has switched. There's a lot of people who switched. They just can't. If you used to see somebody commenting all the time on Twitter or especially on the Facebook groups in the Free Karen Read movement, and then all of a sudden they go quiet, that means they've switched. It means they've died or they've switched. And in most cases, fortunately, it's because they've switched. But they don't really want to kind of take on the mob. I'll deal with one more comment from this buffoon, Mark Sweeney. Never do you take the Karen Read side. It's all Karen killed him. I don't know when you started following it, Mark, but no, I spent months doing videos that more were from the side of a conspiracy. I just kept looking at the evidence, unlike you. That's the difference. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure any of this out. You just have to keep looking at the evidence honestly, dispassionately, objectively, and keep asking questions. That's it. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm an old bartender. I can make a Bloody Mary. I am a rocket scientist when it comes to Bloody Marys. I can make one that's like rocket fuel. But that's it. You just have to have the integrity to keep asking questions. That's it. But for some people, this is a matter of belief now. It's a matter of they feel deeply. And there's also the issue of cognitive dissonance, which is maybe I was talking to Dave the other day. It's maybe the only thing I told him, you laughed. It's the only thing I remember from college. But cognitive dissonance was the idea if you get someone to take this could be used, say, for instance, back during, like, say, Nazi Germany, or even just in any movement trying to get people to do something, or even just if you want to co-opt someone to become part of your gang, you get them to take a small action, something that is against their conscience, but it's small enough that they're willing to do it. But as they process it, because it makes them uncomfortable that it was against their conscience, what happens is they now start to rationalize it, and it's done at a level that's unconscious. Your brain doesn't like this discomfort that comes from the anxiety that comes from doing something that bothers its conscience. So it heads off the thought before it even gets to your conscience mind and twists it into something that rationalizes it. So if you've gone out and held a free Karen Read sign, or if you've bought a free Karen Read cake, it's almost impossible for you to process the evidence here. You've already done actions in this case, and it's just you have too much at personal stake in it, and that's what it's at the unconscious level. So you would have to make you have to have a really powerful mind to have the discipline to see through that. It's very, very to really just sit there and analyze evidence logically. So for people that have taken action in the case, that have invested in it in some kind of really deep emotional way, Um, it's there's kind of no coming back from them. Sorry, I had to chew the cough drop. Um, see, Brian Fitz, Kevin, stop it, or Plevin. I guess he means Kevin. I don't know. You know damn well Karen is innocent. What can you do with people like this? He's probably incapable of making an argument, so he's not going to be capable of understanding one. And you want to reject my argument? Give me the reasons. But I know. So what is the idea here? That I work for the McAlberts? Ugh, it's crazy. Karen Libby says your YER shows stinks. I'm going to watch TYJ. All the young jerks. All right, there you go. That's where the mindless people go, I will admit. See, what I don't understand is, well, no, I do understand it actually, but if you want to do, I don't understand it from a personal thing. If I'm going to analyze something, I'm going to try to be fair about it and try to get to the truth. And to do that, I try to do both sides, which is what I did all summer. And eventually I ended up on one side based on the evidence. But these kind of grifter shows that just show up and they don't ask any questions. They just take all the evidence that they get from Turtle Boy, not because they 100% trust Turtle Boy or something like that, but because they're riding the gravy wave. That's how to get views. And but I just don't understand that. I could never have that. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. The idea that I'm just going to sit there on a channel and not even try to ask questions, not even try to understand, that stuff. It doesn't make sense to me. All right, Brian, I'll give you one more response. All right. I'll say this to you. As I've said, if my analysis proves wrong and there is a conspiracy, I'll gladly quit. And I look forward to that day. This isn't I have other more lucrative things to do, more interesting projects. This ends up just being kind of a waste of time. But you, on the other hand, you got some surprises coming for you, and I don't know how you're going to process them because she's going down. I personally still don't think there's going to be a trial because most of this stuff that people think is going to help establish reasonable doubt is not going to be presented in trial. And just the evidence that we know that's made public, like stuff that I went over tonight, makes it beyond any reasonable doubt that she did this. And there's a lot more that's going to come out in trial. You kind of it's hinted at, and you know it's there. Is Snow a cocaine reference? Yeah, good point. My comfort and joy. I hope all of the devotees of Karen Reed stick around for her after this comes to a conclusion. Karen will need support both socially and financially. I hope they don't abandon her then. I don't know what they're going to do, comfort and joy, because they're turning this into a kind of religion. So maybe she'll kind of become the Madonna, and Turtle Boy he wants to be journalistic Jesus. He'll just be Jesus. I mean, this is kind of turning into like Scientology, as Jennifer Alt said to someone who was formerly in the cult, but who is now anti-Aiden. She's peace, Turtle Rider. Wow, it really is like Scientology for some of these people. Hayden Kane says, because I love it when people they only use caps, because I guess they figure the world is going to ignore them unless their posts are all in caps. Anyways, he says, "Hey Kevin, does your mom's cat have its own bedroom?" My mom doesn't have a cat, but she does have two dogs, and they are like children to him. To her, so if she could, they would have their own bedrooms if that was possible. All right, it's been a long night. I'm just enjoying the comments, especially some of the loonier ones, which all come from the free Karen Reed side. And I'm not just saying that because I think that I can see it's obvious that she's guilty, but it's just some of the people on the other side are just they don't even know that we're laughing at them. They don't know it, and they don't know to the extent that we're going to be laughing at them once this is over. Which I don't know when the trial is going to be, but I had the feeling some parts of this is going to be over pretty soon. So we'll see. Facebook is all free Karen Reed. Yeah, maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. I don't know. But here's the interesting thing. I was like lamenting back in the day that there were no Facebook groups that seemed to debate things from both sides. In fact, I got banned from both Facebook groups just because I questioned things, and you're not allowed to do that there. On the original Facebook group, I was always polite and very rarely said anything. I got attacked there. Was the beginning of this year, just for asking questions. That was back in July, and so I became a slightly more active there, but I was still respectful. And then Sean sent me a message. I'm sorry, Cam, but I'm gonna have to ban you because we only want people that fully believe Karen Reed is innocent. So then, as a result, people could post stuff about me there, and I couldn't see it, which is kind of sucks. And as we all know from this turtle crowd, they're not unwilling. There's no tactic that's beneath them, so they'll easily make shit up about you, and they'll go as low as they can, and it's just what they do. So, and that actually is maybe even partially what led to the threat against me this week, because he was making accusations which are not based in anything true. I knew the crowd, the mob was going to come after me. If I had those kind of things in my background, I would never have taken it on. And I knew they would make shit up, and I was like, I'm just going to ride that out. Because I don't like bullies. And that's what these people are. Most of them are A, stupid, and B, bullies. And they use those kind of tactics against other people. I saw that from Jen using that this week against Bianca and Kristen. It's just disgusting. I don't know why people think it's acceptable behavior that stuff goes on. But is the only reason you say Karen is guilty is so you have a niche in the deal? I don't know what that means, but I have no interest in it. I mean, I have no interest in the financial interest. Actually, I'll tell you this. It will work out better financially for me if there's a conspiracy, because conspiracies sell. And I've been at the center of much of the information that comes out in this case from both sides. And I could, as I write the book, can just easily conclude it with a conspiracy. And all of a sudden the book becomes more valuable. So it would be much more. And just like every aspect of this would have been better to be with the conspiracy. You know, I'd have Turtle Riders would be friendly to me, and Turtle would be friendly, and I'd have those extra several thousand followers that people like the Glare get on his channel that are all related to because they ride that wave. You know, when I took on Turtle Boy, I lost like 800 subscribers overnight. Like, cause I knew that would happen, but integrity means you pursue the truth. Integrity means you don't back down to bullies. Integrity means you stand. If you see someone being bullied, you stand with them. I don't know anything about the grifter. The Glare, but when I put on his channel, when I was alerted last week that he was doing that thing, I'd never heard of him before that. And I go on there and I see all these Turtle Riders in there. I recognize their names. We all know them. And some of them are here even tonight, but they're all on there. And he sees them and he's tickled pink. You could see he's all happy having all these Turtle Riders there. He's buzzing about it. And he sees, and before he even starts the show, I comment there, so he knows I'm there. And he says, I don't know anything about Kevin, and I've never seen any of his videos. So he was ready to go, and he was loving the fact that everybody in there was ready to pounce on me. Kevin's this and Kevin's that and Kevin's this and that. He was loving it. That's an example of someone who sees you're in school, you're in the third grade, and you see the bullies lining up to throw snowballs at the weak kids. I would go stand with the weak kids and throw back. I wasn't a tough guy, but I had a pretty good arm. This guy sees that, gets a smile, and goes and stands with the bullies and starts throwing snow at the weak kids. He showed his character that night. That's what he is. That's what he did. And Turtle Boy showed up, and he had a little schoolgirl smile and giggled, and he said, "Oh, hey, Turtle." It's what he is, dude. And if that sounds like a personal attack, no, it's just, it is, but it's just is based on his behavior. It's based on what he did. And there's a lot of that going on the internet. And he doesn't have any interest in finding the truth. He's never asked out to anybody else. I'm getting some Merry Christmas messages on Facebook too. Thank you. Merry Christmas, guys. Again, appreciate it. Mike wants to know if Sean and the Gulf switched. I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, Sean's dad, who was very close to, was in his 90s, died a few weeks ago. So it could be that. It's a tough time to lose a parent on the holidays. I do know over the last several months that with Sean, evidence would come out like the GPS that would show that John never went in the house. And he would get depressed and go silent for a week or two. And then all of a sudden he'd come roaring back onto the airwaves with a new theory that proved it was a conspiracy, but it was always, each one was a little more out there, like the idea that Paul O'Keefe was somehow part of the conspiracy. I don't know. I hope he's all right. And but he if he's been quiet, it could be he may have finally gone to the other side of the fence. I don't know. Sailboat Wolf says some of the Free Karen Reek votes are so invested in this that they literally cannot see both sides of the argument. Yeah, they're not capable of trying. Mark Sweeney, you really should look up what cognitive dissonance is before you try to spell it. Just get through. It's hard to get to the end sometimes. I can't talk fast enough to keep up with the comments. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Will asked if Karen was there today at Aiden's thing for moral support. Well, I wouldn't really blame her for not being there for that. But Hayden says you're digging pretty deep if you're bragging about making Bloody Marys. Well, you have not had one of my Bloody Marys. If you did, you would say, all right, he's got something going on that. You're right. Brian, who cares? Biff says the young jerks are crying that the lady that received a letter in the mail is being threatened and intimidated, but still side with Aiden that he didn't do the same to the witnesses. It's just the young jerks, another grifter. And I've seen his posts on Twitter. Oh, they're so vapid. It's unbelievable. Oh, James, thank you very much, James. James is I don't know. I'm not sure if I've seen him here before, but he donated $20, and I appreciate it, James. The expenses go towards the StreamYard thing here is about $50 a month. Editing software I use is about $32 a month. There's a couple other things like that. So that's all it goes towards, trying to keep up with that. Actually, I pay, because I'm too long-winded sometimes. I had to pay for the Twitter premium. So that's $16 a month. So it's not a bad deal, though, if anybody likes to post on Twitter. It's kind of worth it. Oh, Carrie, wow, Chris, I feel like a newspaper boy again, getting Christmas tips. Carrie, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Was anybody else here a newspaper boy or deliver newspapers? Because it was really, really awesome to get those tips when you were. Do they even have newspaper boys anymore? I think it's just guys, like the few people that get newspapers, get them from older people that drive around in cars, right, and drop them off. But when we were kids, see, anybody, I don't know, maybe anybody under 40 doesn't understand this now, but back then, most people got the newspaper and you got it delivered to your house. So there were tons of newspaper boys around, or newspaper kids, girls too. And so you most of your pay came from the tips, but Christmas was just awesome because you'd get, a couple bucks, $5. That was a lot back then too. If somebody gave me a $5 tip, so I was a newspaper boy like in the 70s and 80s, 70s and early 80s. $5 was a lot of money back then. And we had an old Italian guy that lived across the street, an old Italian couple. It's a very sweet old guy. He didn't tip. Oh, and nice man. He just that's the culture. That was his particular culture. I'm not saying that's Italian culture. He was old school, old country. They don't. But on Christmas, he'd meet me and he'd press a dime into my hand and he'd say, "Merry Christmas." And you know what? I took that dime and I held his hand and I said, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Panatella." He was a very sweet old man. So that dime still meant a lot. Will Scott, thank you very much. Mark Sweeney, surprisingly, thank you. I appreciate it. Merry Christmas, Mark. To you and your family, Will, everybody. Come on, Jeff, be nice. That's ridiculous. But since let's, all right. So Jeff made an obscene remark about me and Turtle Boy saying a little while ago, but we can talk respectfully about it though. I did put a video out back, maybe end of April, was Turtle Boy hero or villain? And I kind of made the case for both sides, but ended up more on the hero side because it struck me then and now that type of journalism was necessary, independent journalism to break stories. And there isn't a lot of it out there. And he seemed to be kind of the only one. So it is too bad but so much is gone here. It's not just the false report. Well, not false. It's not just the misleading reporting that's taken place on this case, but the tactics. And I'm sure this stuff was probably going on for years, but I just wasn't aware of it. But as soon as somebody disagrees with you, you try to dig into their background to find dirt to destroy them, and a whole bunch of other blackmail tactics that I know about but won't talk about here. This is what this mob does, and it's dirty, and it's just if somebody disagrees with you on it and they're on a YouTube channel, you're gonna try to spread false shit about them, dig into their background, threaten them. That goes with that mob. And then obviously in witness intimidation and that stuff is real. So there's just a lot of aspects of this but I would be the first to support it if it changed. If he could come out and say, all right, I was wrong on this. I'm not doing any of this shit anymore. And I apologize to all the people that I've hurt. I'm going to make amends and I want to go be a journalist. I would be supportive of him. I mean, because we do need that kind of journalism. Does have a lot of sources and has broken stories in the past. If he's in jail, who's going to break stories? I don't know. It's not going to be me. So I don't really know, but hopefully somebody steps into the breach. Patrice says the trial will take place. They will not offer a plea deal at this point. The evidence is overwhelming. That's a good point. And she says, unfortunately has showed no remorse. Those could all be factors. And I know that in situations like this, if a prosecution is going to make a deal with someone, they do have to consult the family. So it would come down to John's family. I have no idea what they would say, but possibly for the good of everybody involved, if a deal involved her admitting what was going on, maybe that would be enough, right? I mean, maybe nobody wants to see more blood here, which sending Karen to jail for a long time is doing that. And so maybe people would be happy just with a true mea culpa that accepts responsibility for what happens and takes the heat off all the other people that are being falsely smeared. Just looking through, making sure I don't miss any newcomers. someone named Hell Toupee, but he spelled it Toupee. So like toupee, right? Like I should have a toupee. That's a cool name. Jules said some other crime show tore the glare apart. It's awesome. It's on my Twitter. Again, you know it. When I saw him on Dave's show, he seemed very reasonable, and he sounded like is capable of taking the right approach, but he's chosen not to. He's chosen to be a grifter and just kind of ride the wave and not ask any serious questions. And some of it was understandable. It was almost like he was kind of back where we were last April, early May, before we got to see more of the evidence and have a better understanding of the case. But he was given a chance to do that. I told him right there. I said, "You can call me up on the phone. Get my number from Dave. I'll talk to you. I'll let you know. Even if it doesn't convince you, it's going to show you it'll start the seed. Listen, anybody that asks honest questions does end up eventually on the other side. But you may not see it all at once. You may sometimes have to go through these questions several times in your mind and look at the documents and start figuring out for yourself. But eventually, once you process it, you do end up on the other side. But he wasn't interested in that process. Just wanted to ride the wave. Fucking random citizen. Sorry about the swear. That's his or her name. Why are you writing a book on this to raise money? Why not write a book on how you beat stage 4 cancer after raising only? See, all right, I will address this. See, I'll take anything on. This is kind of cool because this shows what they do. All right. I'm going to read his comment out again, but this shows what they do. This is the kind of grift, what they are, the kind of dirt diggers that they try to do. They try to find anything they could on me because I question their dear leader. Okay. Why are you writing a book in this case to raise money? Why not write a book on how you beat stage 4 cancer after raising only $3,182 raised of your $7,000 GoFundMe goal? That could help so many patients. That's loaded with sarcasm because he's clearly saying that I don't know. He's probably saying I don't have cancer. That I tried to make up money. I'll explain the whole thing. Now, I was diagnosed with cancer 5 years ago, so a little more than 5 years ago, in October of 2017, and stage 4 lung cancer, non-small cell lung cancer, of the particular type exon 19 deletion, and it was widely spread. I had 26 bone mets, which are lesions in the bones. That's how I ended up going to the hospital. I had been getting pain spreading through my body for a year, and we finally determined it was lung cancer. I waited too long to go to the doctor too, but it was already spreading at that point. So I was eligible because of the wonders of modern medicine for what's called a targeted therapy. Now it's basically a designer drug that they're able to do for certain types, only a very few types of cancers right now. But it's a designer drug that fits the cancer cell kind of like a key to a lock. And what it does is it just stops the process of growth. So it doesn't kill the cancer, but it stabilizes it. And eventually what happens is the cancer becomes adaptable, it becomes immune to that drug, and then it no longer works. Now, on my particular drug, which is called Tagrisso, it takes on average, it takes about 18 months normally for that to happen. But that means some people are bad luck. It takes 6 months. Other people get 3 or 4 years. But I've had 5 years in running, and the cancer has been stable. So that is probably just shit good luck. And I'm very grateful for it. I'm not the only person. I'm not breaking any kind of a record with that. In fact, I did see someone, it's a relatively new drug, but I have seen someone that's been stable for 7 years on it. And I've seen a few others that were over 5. So it's not that rare or exceptional. It's still I'm in my chances of surviving 5 years were 2%. So yeah, I have been very lucky on that. But you bring up the GoFundMe. So at the time, I didn't think I really want to do this, but friends of mine, I knew nothing about cancer, I knew nothing about any of this stuff. and they suggested that I use THC oils, so marijuana oils, to try to combat this. And there was a lot of, it seemed like a lot of literature that said maybe there was something to it, right? Enough to, I'm a researcher, it was enough to at least make it interesting. But to get that pure THC oil that you need to get, it's expensive, and it's hard to come by. And if actually at that point, it wasn't even, there were no open, I don't think this dispensaries were open. You know, they might have been open in Massachusetts. I'm not sure actually, but you can't buy that kind of oil like at those kind of levels you need. You need to take basically a microdose every 2 hours, every day for a month, and then you do, or 6 weeks actually, and then you do periodic doses after that to keep it going if it's going to work. So to raise money for that, I set up a GoFundMe, and I initially I didn't even make it public. I decided against it. I was on the fence, and then a couple of friends of mine found out about it, and they put it on their Facebook, and I did get some donations for it, and I did use that to buy THC oil. For about 2 years, I didn't use it. I sat on it. I just decided maybe I better not. Maybe I better just let the medicine do its work. However, I'd always taken this approach to the cancer. I knew that I had, if I was lucky, 2 or 3 years. If I was super lucky, 5 years, right? And I felt I needed something to boost the odds. And the chances of finding that were slim. But if you use the power of the internet and social media and Facebook, you can find information about other compounds that might possibly be having some effect, or supplements and things like that. It's tricky because it's not going to be FDA approved. It's going to be, and it's like you're pulling stuff off the internet. So all you can do is the best research you can find on it, see what medical science behind it, see how many testimonials there are from other people, and reach out to them and find out if they're real, find out what their experiences were. So I have actually been on, I'd say I take about 13 or 14 supplements right now. They're things that I've been taking, most of them for a good chunk of that 5 years. I added a few, as time went on. And have those made a difference for me? Who knows? Who really knows? And if somebody has cancer and you're interested in those things that I'm trying, please reach out. I'd be happy to share them with you. But I have I'm not telling you that they helped me. I don't know that. They probably don't. They're things you can buy legally on Amazon. They're supplements. A couple of them are expensive. One of them is a type of fish oil. It's like $50 for a bottle of 60 pills, and it's DHA. And scientists are doing medical exams, work with this, and there are even some clinical trials that combine this with medicine, including my medicine. I don't know if they're working, but I guess what they found is that this particular substance, DHA, is the cancer likes it. It sucks it into the cells. So if you take a heavy enough dose of this every day, the theory is that it'll overload on this and it'll destroy the cancer cells. Now, I'm not sure how well that's actually working out, but so that, and among other things, are what I take. But to the THC oil, I did try that finally about 2 years ago. I said, screw it, I'm going to give it a shot. So I did this microdosing thing. So I took this, it turned out to be potent stuff. And I was taking this every 2 hours, every 2 or 3 hours for, I'd say, about 40 days. I was stoned for 40 days. So the young jerks would like that. It looks like, anyways. But I didn't really enjoy that, to tell you the truth, because for the most part, it was unpleasant because you're in a fog. I don't like that. I'm a coffee nut. I like to be awake. Despite what you think that I drink all the time, I drink about 1 drink a month at the most, So that's where the money went to. That was 5 years ago. That GoFundMe is long closed. There's no GoFundMe now. No one has donated to that for 5 years. I don't think there's any way to donate it to it now. If there is, please don't. It's closed. I'm not looking for money to fight cancer. Okay. So I never have. I didn't even really look for it back then. It was a couple of friends that put it on Facebook. That's it. But for the people that donated to me, I am grateful. And who knows, maybe that THC did do something to me. But look, I go for scans every 3 months, and it's been the same size for the 5 years. It has slight variation up and down, but that's probably just measurement variation. So that's good. That means it's stable. But I didn't see, when I was taking stuff like the THC, you go to the scan thinking like maybe we'll see that it reduced in size, if it went down 40%. And then you say, all right, then I'll find the money and get more of this stuff. But no, there was no change at all. So I take the supplements, I exercise every day. Um, I do believe that that's important. I believe that other things probably important, like watching comedies and laughing. So I watch a lot of Two and a Half Men. I still like old episodes of Seinfeld. It's important to avoid stress. That's where that's where people that are friends of mine and family say you're making a big mistake doing this stuff with the Karen Reed, taking on the mob, because you're bringing in this negativity in your life that is going to have a detrimental effect eventually on your health. That may be. I don't know. I just don't like the idea of backing down to a fight. So Boundless Millennial is here. Boundless Millennial. I watch your videos. They're always very entertaining. That's the first time I've seen you here. Welcome, and I do enjoy your videos. You're very creative and very funny. I wish I could be funny like you. It's pretty good. He says, imagine wittingly killing your significant other and pushing a social media conspiracy to cause even more pain to the friends and family. Karen Reed. Well, that was a very serious comment. Usually his videos are very funny. See, when he puts that in a video, it's pretty funny the way he does it. He's very entertaining. Comfort and Joy says, check out Dolly Vision. I don't know what that is. He's a jerk, but he isn't. I don't know what it is. All right, Sarah Clancy. Again, we're back to receipts, okay? Sarah Clancy says, the fact you wrote a Word document, called it a receipt, and then basically said, because there was a discrepancy of give or take 3 minutes from the health app. All right, the rest I can't relate. Maybe she ran out of time to finish a comment, but she's saying that it's not a receipt what I gave you. All right, I cut and paste all that stuff from the the prosecution document that was from September. If you doubt that, you can email me at leits, Leits, KEV, @gmail.com, and I will send you that document, that receipt. You may already have it. I mean, it was publicly available since September, but that's as much a receipt as you can expect. I mean, it'd be better if I made screenshots of that document. The reason I cut and pasted it was so it was the only way I could think to make it big enough so that people could read. I actually, that document that I cut and pasted that from is the same one that I was showing you the images of the house from, the GPS images. So it's the same document. Hi, Slatherings. Good to see you. Merry Christmas. I want to be getting off soon. Tom says the Bloody Marys are not mediocre. I can attest to that. Come on, Tom. They're the best. You know it. Zeke says, don't forget to hit like. Yeah, I'm supposed to say that stuff too. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe. If you're still here, guys, hit like, hit subscribe. And if you want someone who's going to try to report the truth, that's always what I'll do. If I make a mistake, I'll correct it. If I get something wrong, I'll correct it. If I do make mistakes, and I will always correct them. If somebody gives me information, I really try to check it out and verify it. But ultimately, when you have a source, you have to make decisions. So, for instance, I got a lot of information over the last couple of weeks that I can't report, but some of the sources are unverified, but some of the other sources are so verified that to me, I'm like, I'm only not reporting them to protect those sources and stuff. But I mean, that's the process you go through. Kevin will be exposed shortly for being a fraud. To me, I mean, this is a matter of religious belief with you. I've laid out the arguments. They're not hard to follow. I just laid them out for you. So, at the best you could, you think Kevin didn't think it through right. He's missed something. But dude, it's not going to work out the way you think. I know you really so much want there to be a conspiracy for some reason. I don't know why, but it's not going to work out the way you think. I'm sorry. It just ain't. All right. I got to skip to the end because it's time to put the dogs away. And I stayed up. Oh, hi, Fiona. Good to see you. I'm sorry. I missed if you were here earlier and I missed your comments. And Sean Peterson said, just dropped in to say, ha ha ha, you lose eyes, free Karen Reed. Spoken like a free Karen reader. Without a doubt. All right, guys, again, sincerely, whatever side of the fence that you're on, please have a safe holidays. Yesterday was the shortest day of the year. So these are the darkest depths of or the beginning of winter, but the darkest depths of the year. The leaves are all gray. The sky is gray. The grass is gray. It's bleak. But it's a time to be with family. Hopefully you can do that. That's why we have this kind of a holiday where we use a lot of lights and color to try to make it more festive. I'm probably going to be spending mine at the hospital with my mom, but I'll be grateful for that to be able to do that. So that's not a complaint at all. And it'll be unique for me to be at a hospital on Christmas Day. But again, I'll be grateful to be there with her. And so that'll be very good. But for everybody here, embrace your family, embrace your kids, embrace your parents, everybody else you care about. Enjoy the holidays. And if you're following these kinds of cases, try to always just keep asking questions until you have really pieced together enough evidence to make a conclusion in your own mind. And even then, keep questioning. If there's certain parts of the evidence that seem foundational and you can't explain them, then keep digging. Keep digging, and you'll get there. All right, guys, have a very good night and have a good Christmas. Thank you.